Cyno is an interesting character. He was the original Sumeru poster boy, being the Travail character. His writing is pretty good, in my opinion. He has a good arc in the Archon quest and multiple facets to his character. But he has a problem. Cyno has two sides, one for work and one for leisure. But the leisure side, something that could be well written, has been reduced to a single caricature of a meme. Dad jokes. Love them or hate them, I personally hate them. It's impossible to ignore that this has become a half of Cyno's character. So, let's look into that. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. I recently found that only 5% of you are subscribed, which, what? If you're still on the fence though, watch this one until the end and make your mind up. I make a ton of videos like this one analyzing the Genshin story, and if you want to stay up to date with what I post, make sure to turn on your notifications. Alright, let's talk about Cyno. To start, we have to ask if it's a problem at all. And to be clear, yeah, it is. Memes are normally harmless for a character. A perfect example of this is Nervalette in the
Judgment of the oratrice mécanique d'analyse cardinale.
It's an iconic joke about him, but it doesn't eclipse him as a character. Nervalette doesn't stop to say
Oratrice mécanique d'analyse cardinale.
every time he's on screen, it happened, it was funny, and we move on. And then Cyno. His entire character is a meme, and I don't really understand why, though I'll get to that later. While he has a serious side due to his position, it makes sense he has a side for his friends, which we see. It adds nuance to his character and makes him feel like a real person. For example, I had connections to someone in the military. But while he was super professional for his job, straight face, and all that, it wasn't uncommon to see him out drinking on the weekends. Cyno, similarly, is cold and intimidating during all his work. But when he goes out for dinner with Kali and Tainari, he's not staring dead-eyed into their souls. The problem with this is how he's framed. His entire off-duty persona has been ruined by the puns, making him more flat and simple, which is the opposite of what they were trying to achieve. So, what were my impressions of Cyno that made him so interesting in the first place? We first meet Cyno in the third act of the Sumeru Archon quest, and our first impression is of him attacking us. When we talk closer, though, we get an understanding of who he is. Cyno is the feared and revered General Mahamatra, but he recently deserted the academia because they were keeping things from him. His whole struggle as a character is determining who deserves punishment based on his judgment, not the judgment of the one using him. He's also one of the leading figures to help the desert people be more accepted into rainforest society. I loved his character. While not the most original struggle ever, it has nuance and depth. It also contributed well to Sumeru's overall themes, specifically the one about knowledge and who should be allowed to use it. Cyno's entire story quest is about smuggling canned knowledge too, further playing into that. Not to mention his whole lore with Hananubis and the Temple of Silence, which we explored in his second story quest. A main disappointment of mine in Cyno's first story quest was not exploring his backstory, which I didn't understand. I knew it was rich though, and that was truly shown in the second act. The second act also shows Cyno in his relaxation mode, like I mentioned, which should add depth, but it doesn't. So, let's talk about Cyno's off-duty side. Before the memes, it was pretty good. His voice actor did a good job separating that, making the off-duty a few tones lighter. He was definitely a different guy, distinct from work mode. He had a secret hobby in Genius and Vacation TCG, and voice lines from and about him commenting on what he was like outside of work. He's like a father figure to Kale, as well as a good friend to Hatham, Kaveh, and Tainari. And then comes the line.
A joke. I've got just the one. There once was a traveler, stranded in the desert and dying of thirst, who in desperation prayed for a hydro slime to come their way. But the traveler didn't realize that at that very moment, a starving hydro slime was praying to meet a lone, stranded traveler. What? Not funny?
Cyno knows he's intimidating, but in order to do his job properly, he needs his subordinates to relax around him. If they're scared of him, it could inhibit their efficiency. So he tells jokes to lighten the mood. At first, this is harmless. Most characters have their little quirks to make them stand out, like Kaching having a secret obsession with Rex Lapis. But as with Nervalette, this isn't Kaching's whole personality. When the meme community learned of this quirk of Cyno's, it was everywhere. Just search up Cyno meme and you'll have bad jokes for days. Hoyo obviously saw the pun culture forming around Cyno, as it was hard not to. But this became especially apparent in version 3.5 during the Windbloom Festival. In this event, some characters from Sumeru came to visit Mondstadt. Kali wanted to thank Amber for helping her back in the events of the manga. Kali and Tonari came along both to protect her and sightsee. And through the entire event, the only thing Cyno does is make bad puns. My god. Like, I know it's been a while, but skimming my memory of the event, I genuinely can't remember a single Cyno scene where he didn't tell at least one joke. It was slightly better in the Parade of Providence event, but that could also be attributed to the fact that Cyno was barely in it. And I want to be clear here, I'm not blaming the memes. The joke is funny, the templates are good. While puns may be the bane of my existence as an individual, puns are a good bit for characters who need it. And Cyno does need it. Well written as he is, we've all seen the solemn cop who fights for justice and passes judgment on his own whims. Batman literally exists, also did Luke. Having a lighthearted side helps Cyno stand out. But when an entire half of him can be summed up to haha bad pun, it doesn't make him more complex, but rather the opposite. When I first ran into Cyno as a new player, I expected him to be, I kid you not, a comic relief character. I know it sounds ridiculous, but as someone who had only seen the memes, I fully expected him to just be a funny pun guy. When he was introduced by attacking us, I was genuinely startled. This is the problem. Players like me. His mischaracterization is so out of line with his real self that it's changing player and even writer perception of him. Memes in general are simple jokes. Stuff like Zhao short. They're shallow and stupid, and that's fine, that's what they're supposed to be. But in turning Cyno into a meme character, it inadvertently makes him shallow and stupid too. But can this be fixed? I believe so, and I think it's already starting. So how would we go about fixing him? Simple. This solution may sound basic, but it would work wonders. Explore his friendships. I mentioned this earlier, but the worst part about Cyno is how much lore he has. He has good connections with the people around him. He saved Kale, was student buddies with Tainari, etc. He has really good lore with Hermanubis and Sethos. Not to mention a deep relationship with his adopted father, Cyrus, that greatly influenced where he is today. A good idea would be to draw a connection between Cyno and Cyrus and Cyno and Kale. Cyno, in my perceptions / headcanons, plays a role alongside Tainari as adoptive fathers for Kale. Similarly, Cyno was adopted by Cyrus. It's hinted that Cyrus had a dumb sense of humor like Cyno. If you could write this as Cyno learning to play a parental role from the example of his own adoptive father, this could be very well done. It could add some depth to his jokes in the past. We also don't know a lot about Cyno's friendships. He has friends, we know, Tainari, Alhaitham, and Kaveh, but we don't really see why they're friends. Tainari and Cyno's relationship was expanded upon during Cyno's second story quest. We learned that they were friends in the academia and a bit about their old habits. But for Alhaitham and Kaveh, we don't really get anything. We know Cyno met Kaveh through Tainari and presumably Alhaitham through Kaveh, though we never really get to know for sure. And besides that, we don't get much. They really only feel like friend of a friend. The reason we should bother including these relationships at all, though, is that they give depth. In order to help fix the excessive jokes, it would help to show the environment that cultivates them, Cyno's relationships. Besides that, it would also help to give Cyno more hobbies. Yeah, I know, most Genshin players should ever. He has TCG, sure, but it feels swept aside for the jokes. Give the TCG equal room with the jokes. Then while it might still feel a little flat, having multiple assets to a second side could make him feel more realistic. Anyway, what do you think? This one is a bit shorter than usual because last week has been crazy for me. Even so, I hope you still enjoyed it. If you did and stayed till the end, definitely subscribe. I post video essays like this one every Saturday. If you want to have a say in the next video I make, check out my community tab for polls deciding or join my Discord. Link in the description and the pinned comment. Alright, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are, and hope to see you in the next one.